stem cell therapy. So stem cell drugs are the products of stem cells, whereas stem cell therapy follows the procedures which are used during this with stem cells. Stem cell drugs can be purchased as off-the-shelf products, and in stem cell therapy, you can either use the off-the-shelf products or you can have them directly from a donor. Then stem cell drugs are produced in a large quantity with minimal batch-to-batch variation. However, in stem cell therapy, you usually have batch-to-batch variation because of depending on the donor you have, right? And depending on the protocol or the procedure you use for their isolation. So there can be a batch-to-batch variation in that, which might lead to different kinds of variations in the final result or final response you get. Also, the quality, because there are lesser batch-to-batch variations, so the quality of the products or the stem cell drugs, that's very stringently controlled, and they come under the like GMP guidelines. So they are very closely monitored for their quality, for their safety, and for their efficacy. But with the stem cell therapy, as I mentioned earlier, the batch-to-batch variations are there because you have different donors, you have different isolation and production procedures. So in terms of consistency, stem cell drugs they do have an upper hand as compared to stem cell therapy. And stem cell drugs are approved as drugs as we know them, that they are literally the drugs. And stem cell therapy is like, they can be used as medical devices, like in the form of actual cells there, like actual stem cells being transplanted into a patient. So a lot of work has been done in stem cells, in the field of stem cells, especially when you talk about their clinical applications and how they're contributing to the drug development or the pharmaceutical industry in general. But a lot is still in the pipeline. A lot of stuff is still being developed. So these are few of the examples which have the studies with these stem cell products have been done on a pilot level, and they're still being explored on a larger section of human population or human subjects with their due consent to see if they have like a consistent results in terms of disease response and the safety of these products. So like here we have stem cell patches for heart. So this is kind of a scaffold where you grow the cells and then you plant these cells into the damaged area of the heart. It's kind of a patch, small little patch that is transplanted or that is planted onto the damaged heart tissue. And then it kind of secretes various factors which help in the repair of that damaged tissue. So there have been a few studies in the animals right now in the pilot level, and the researchers and the clinicians have had positive responses towards those when they have used these patches for heart-related damages. So these are still being probed for like a larger section of human population, probably, to see if it can actually work the same way in a human system. Another thing is the stem cell patches for retina. Now, this is one of the success stories with the stem cell product. This stem cell patch for retina was used in the case of macular degeneration, which is a vision deformity. So here it's like almost you lose most of your vision. So in one of the patients, it was tested on a total of 4 patients of macular degeneration, and out of them, like most of them had like 75% of their vision restored. So this has shown very, very positive effects in the patients as such, directly in the patients. So it's kind of the clinicians are hoping that they can study that in a larger population to be more sure of the results that are being obtained in the pilot study. So they're still investigating how effective they are when macular degeneration as well as other vision-related disorders. Then we have stem cell gun for burns. Here you have a gun kind of a machine that's filled with the stem cell suspensions, and that's directly sprayed onto the burn areas. And this was also tested on one of the burn patients who was like 30 years ago. He had almost 70 to 80% restoration of his skin cells that were damaged due to burns. So even after a gap of so long a time, like almost 50, he got burned during his childhood time, and still had his skin cells repaired, right, when it came to the stem cell gun. After that, we had also had stem cell injections for hair loss. So it's like one of the major problems affecting almost everybody, like irrespective of the age group. So stem cells can also be used for rejuvenating the hair follicles and then probably leading to better hair growth. So in general, it's not all good about stem cells. There's certain cons, there's certain flip side to it. So there could be positives and negatives of a stem cell therapy or a stem cell model. In the pros or in the benefits we have is that they have countless possibilities towards diseases that are affecting human beings in general. They can be used for their therapy. Have the they are one of the key factors in the body's self-repair mechanism. When there is a damage, stem cell therapy or stem cell transplantation can be a very important factor in the repair of that damaged organ or damaged tissue. They're being constantly used in the drug development and the developmental studies in general to study, for toxicity testing, for drug screening, for disease modeling, and for in general identifying the normal human physiology or the pathological conditions in general. And when you have a transplantation with adult stem cells, the chances of rejection are very low because they are essentially derived from the person you are treating. So there are lesser immune responses against these kind of transplantation and lesser chances of rejection. But what are the disadvantages? So it's growing them and maintaining them is a very time-consuming process in the laboratory or like in any picture or in any organization in general. So before they use, when you have to grow them, then that can be a time-consuming process. So the stem cell therapy, this area is still developing, it's still progressing. So the long-term effects are yet not known. What could be like in short term, you could see recovery, but you never know how it could revert in like if you like after a certain amount of time. So that is still not very clear among clinicians, like what effects could be after a long-term treatment with the stem cells. Then you have reproducibility issues because of the variations in the donors and the batch-to-batch variations, as I mentioned earlier. So there could be difference, like once you get a data, once you get a response against a disease, it's not necessary you're going to get the exact data or the exact response the second time because of the variation in the batches. And obviously the ethical constraints with the embryonic stem cells that I mentioned earlier, they also restrict their use as in like in therapeutic implications against those diseases. So there are a few cons, but it's really you have to strike a balance between the two to see if the stem cell biology or the stem cell therapy can be beneficial or can be detrimental to the human system as such. So striking a balance between the two is the key here, right? Now, what we got to learn from this whole session, which what I could shed light on during this whole session was that stem cells have a huge potential for therapy in case of various diseases and a lot of medical issues that people face right now. Stem cells could come in very effective in finding a cure to those diseases. It has the capacity to repair the damaged cells within the body, and that's why the regenerative medicine using stem cells is growing so fast now. And these cells could be used to study various diseases, how the pathology works, identify various compounds which have the potential to later on qualify as a drug, and for the toxicity testing also, as well as understanding the side effects of various drugs. And since they are more relatable to human system, uh, all the FDA, all the stem cell therapy need to be FDA approved, because that determines their quality, their safety, and their efficacy in a human system when they are injected into a human body, into a patient, or if they are taken as stem cell drugs. So every treatment has to be duly approved by the FDA. Also, the presence of so many clinical, like so many stem cell projects in the pipeline against diseases that need to be treated through stem cell therapy, they are a major contributor to the revenue generation in the global market in altogether. So this stem cell have hugely contributed to the pharmaceutical industry, to the drug development industry, and to the research and clinical field in general. And the various they uses, they open up a vast array of possible careers, possible opportunities that I think of even pharmacy students, or who do not necessarily have a training or a background in biology, like core biology, they can also easily pursue or a career in stem cell research if they want to, with like just basic training. So I think stem cells are the trending, one of the trending topics in research in the biomedical and the pharmaceutical research right now. And a lot has been done, but there's still a lot to be done now for an effective stem cell approach towards uh, disease modeling and drug development. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and I thank you all for being so patient and listening to this whole talk. And I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
There is a question, madam, in the chat box from Mr. Raghavendran from FarmD. Madam, can you explain the stem cells are used to regenerate and cure diseases? So, if the mother have one disease, how the
Mm-hmm.
stem cell can use to prevent the disease from for the baby without taking any medication?
So is it like once the baby is born, or some disease that is detected before the birth?
So, I think he is talking about hereditary diseases.
Okay. So what usually is done in that case, you've been, I think, possibly have heard about the stem cell banking thing, right? The cord blood cells are the placenta or the cord blood of the mother is safe. People are opting for saving that or preserving that those stem cells. Like in future, if the baby has some disease, be it hereditary or any other, those cells can be used to treat that particular disorder in the baby, because those cells which are present in the placenta cells, that same cells would be there in the baby too. So the genetic profile would be similar. So now this is one of the major reasons why the cord bloods or the stem cell banks are being promoted so much now. This actually, if there, this is like if the baby has some kind of inherited disorder, those cells can later on be used for converting these stem cells into the desired, like isolating the stem cells from the cord blood or from the placenta, and then differentiating them into a specific cell type, and then probably using them for therapy in the babies. However, having said that, I'm not sure like how effective or what would be the success rate of those this kind of a therapy in a baby. because it's still progressing, right? It's still is its like infant stages, right? So there haven't been many reports apart from being some bone marrow transplantation studies that was also between siblings. So this is one of the possible, one of the reasons why the cord blood is preserved, but I'm not sure what the success rate is so far. I mean, there are very limited studies on that.
Thank you. Madam, you have told during your presentation, stem cells can be derived from skin like a fibroblast. Yeah. Then why there is so much
Right.
emphasis on that umbilical cord stem cells, madam? For a lot of stem cell banks came and they are emphasizing during the delivery they are taking stem cells. So what is the purpose? Because we can easily take it from skin. Then why they want to
Right.
store,
So
yeah, and they are getting money?
yeah,
Yeah. Can you explain
yeah.
this?
So yeah. So that's of course, yeah. That's a good question actually. So this is, yeah. There's a flip side to it. The money making and the commercialization of the process is one disadvantage of promoting the stem cell preservation thing. This was the concept, as I mentioned earlier, was developed because due to like to be prepared if the child has any disorder later on, to be so that we have a stock of cells which can be used to protect that child against some disease. But yes, there's a lot of money minting thing going on, which like people are commercializing it big time, and they just kind of scare the parents to preserve it for later stages. With the IP, like the skin biopsy that I mentioned for iPSC derivation, it's like it that those are adult tissues. So it's said that I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it's normally said when you have the younger lot of cells, like the from the cord blood, they're more effective. It's said in terms of their response in case of a disease. But uh, now, what the studies are coming up, it's even the iPSCs that are derived from a person's tissue or like from a person's or a patient's skin, even they have the potential to treat or to the disease in that patient equally, right? So this whole concept of old cells and new cells is not like the line is very bleak now. So there's no concrete evidence stating that the cells that have been preserved during like the delivery, the cord blood cells, they will perform better when compared to the cells that have been derived from the adult tissue or from the skin of the patient. So there is like people say to ask the parents to save the cells because I guess more studies have been done on the cells derived from that cord blood as compared to the cells derived from the skins or the iPSCs that we are talking about here. So the data for the cord blood cells is much more as compared to the data derived from the iPSCs. So probably this is one of the factor why they feel that cord blood should be preserved for treating a disease later on. But it's like even if you don't preserve it, it's you can still have a therapy against a particular disease with your own cells. So I really don't think that's the stress is that justified. But yeah, it's like up to a person, up to like that's a personal choice. If you want to preserve it, fair enough. If you don't, even then you can have a cure later on.
Thank you. How long it can be stored, madam? That stem cells.
The cord blood,
Yeah,
the
umbilical
cord
cord
blood
stem cells.
stem
Yeah,
cells.
yeah, cord stem
Oh,
cells.
they can be stored for a long, long time. Yeah, so they are cryopreserved, like they are preserved at very, very low temperatures of like minus 196, I guess. And they can preserve for a very long time. So I have worked with those cells in my PhD. So I know they do not, but the point is you have to collect them and preserve them right away when you cut the cord, right? So that there shouldn't be any delay in that. So the moment you cut the cord, you have to just quickly preserve them so that the quality doesn't deteriorate. So But once they are preserved, they're sustained like for a long period of time. So it's like people, that's the reason why it's being promoted. Like during the time of delivery, it's preserved and it can be used anytime later on if the baby has some problem, even if it's like during the growing ages too. So the quality doesn't really deteriorate when it's preserved at that low temperature.
Thank you, madam. Madam, if we collected a stem cell from an individual, it can be treated to, it can be used to treat a single individual or anyone from their family or all other patients also, madam.
Yeah. So treatment is like we have two types of treatment, or the two types of stem cell transplants. One is called as the autogenic transplant and the other is the allogenic transplant. Autogenic transplant is when a person's cell is used for the transplantation into his or her own body, right? So there is no immune response against it. There is no rejection rate in that. That is done in the personalized medicine concept, or even in the regenerative medicine concept, where a patient's own cells are used for deriving the stem cells, and they're eventually then converted into a desired cell type and transplanted back into that patient. In the allogenic system, you have stem cells derived from a different source or a different person, which are being administered to a different to another individual. So there comes the embryonic stem cells, as I mentioned. Those are like they are derived from an embryo, which is not essentially the same profile as the patient, right? So that is known as the allogenic transplant. But in that case, the rejection rate is higher because the system doesn't identify the stem cells from another person as his or her own. So there are increased immune responses against it. So there are fair chances like the transplant could be rejected altogether. So what the ones that were successful were in the allogenic system were the bone marrow transplantation between the siblings. So that was one of the cures for leukemia, and that was a successful cure where the siblings, where the bone marrow from one sibling was transplanted or injected into the other sibling with the disease or with leukemia. So that can have rejection rates. I mean, it's still not an identical system, but it's slightly lesser because since they're siblings, so the genetic profile is somewhat similar. But then you always have higher chances of rejection in allogenic system. So it's not like you cannot use stem cells from some other person into another person. So we have both the ones. Like we have autogenic stem cell transplantations and allogenic transplantations as well, depending on the use or depending on the case that's being treated.
Thank you, madam. There is a question from Dr. Tirupati Muresan. How stem cell can be used in the treatment of stroke?
In the treatment of stroke, I would not see. I honestly speaking, I'm not very sure how it works, but it's generally said like transplantation. So stroke is like you have a clot, right? You have a damaged portion of the brain. So what general I would say, I'm not sure if that's 100% correct. It's like you transplant the cells into that damaged area or near that damaged area, and either those cells can directly integrate into the tissue and replace the damaged part of the tissue or of the brain that's affected by stroke, or they can secrete certain factors which can help in repair of that stroke area, right? So those are usually the growth factors that are secreted by stem cells. This like the stem cell therapy in case of stroke is still like it's as I showed in the slide, it's still under trial. It's in the clinical trials. It's still being investigated if you have a positive response. In animal studies, as far as I know, that we've had positive results, but in the human subjects, it's still being investigated. The trials are on, but this is this is the possible mechanism through how the stem cell therapy in stroke works, or in general in any kind of damage to brain or any other organ. This is how the stem cell therapy actually works in any scenario, either through like through direct integration into the system or through secretion of their factors.
Thank you. Madam, stem cell therapy is a part of gene therapy or it is a different one? Any gene modification
Uh,
will be there?
so yeah. So yeah, it's like depending on the approach you have. So you can directly, like if you have a patient, you derive the stem cells from it, from that patient, and then you directly you convert them into desired cell types, and then you inject them back into the patient. This is one way of doing it. Another is like that's the conventional stem cell therapy. Another thing that involves, there is also gene therapy using stem cells. You can say you can make genetic modifications in the stem cells. You can, if you have, say you have a person with a certain disease, you derive the stem cells from that person, and then through molecular biology tools, you can correct the mutation in that gene, say the gene that is responsible for causing the disease. You can edit those mutations, you can correct the gene, and then convert it back into the specific cell type and then inject it into the patient. So that is another way of treating the disease. So you have both the cell therapy as well as the gene therapy approach towards the disease treatment when you have stem cells. So this is how, I mean, these are the two approaches of things. So yes, gene therapy can also be a part of stem cell therapy.
Okay, madam. Come to the economical part. There are a lot of compatibility issues and it will become more individualized therapy. So what will be the cost if it was coming to the practice, madam, compared to regular drugs?
So in terms of treatment, if you say, if you're going for the clinical treatment, like if you're going to a clinic for a treatment, say using stem cell for obtaining a stem cell therapy, it's expensive. In the way, like in the sense, because very few people do it who have the like the approval from FDA. There are very few clinics who are specialized to do that. So there's a kind of a monopoly in the market, and that's why the prices are high. So if you say in like in the US, if I say it's somewhere around beginning from 5 to 50,000 US dollars. It could be anywhere in between. In China, if you say it's around 30,000 US dollars. So in I guess in European countries also it's in the range of $30,000. So as therapy, it's expensive, I'd say, because not many people do it. And but if you talk about the development, the trial, and the drug development portion, that the stem cell, the research or the stem use of stem cells has reduced the cost in the development process, but not in the like end product. If you want to have the therapy as such, if you want it as a treatment, then yes, it is expensive.
Thank you. Madam, that stem cell therapy can be provide a permanent cure or throughout the life they have to continue this therapy, madam.
So that's a good question. The long-term effects are still to be monitored, but it is said whatever studies have been done so far, whatever success stories are so far, it's like after you need to get kind of stem cell shots after every 2 to 3 years, it's said. So in some of the diseases that have been treated, it's like people have to get their stem cell shots or booster doses like in every 2 to 3 years. But the long-term effects or how effective that could be over a long period of time, that's still to be monitored and seen. But yeah, you need to take it over like 2 to 3 years, I guess, again and again.
Thank you, madam. And stem cells can be used for infections, madam.
Sorry, can you repeat the
So,
question?
stem cells can be used to treat infections, madam. Like now, currently we are facing some pandemics, COVID. Those conditions can be used.
Yes. So stem cell, like if you talk about COVID right now, the studies are on for using them for therapy, depending on the system that's affected. Like if you talk essentially about the COVID scenario, um, for infectious diseases, it's like if you have a bigger outbreak kind of a thing, like a pandemic kind of thing or an epidemic kind of a thing, then probably stem cell therapies are used for normal infections, which can be treated by just the available drugs. I don't think stem cells are used there. I mean, I'm not very sure of the answer here. But in the COVID scenario, I know studies are going on. So, with the disease modeling, they have already been done. And with the therapy aspect, yes, they are using them to see in a model system of, say, kidney cells or lung cells that are affected, how stem cell factors can, when those cells are challenged with the COVID antigen, how stem cell factors can reduce the damage done by the virus. So it's still, I'm not sure how much of it is being done in like other kind of viral infections or where other infectious diseases, but I do think it is going on. I mean, I don't have a certain answer here, but I think they do play a part. I mean, they are being used. But the focus is more on the bigger diseases in the stem cell therapy market, like not just the infectious diseases, because they can be treated with other available options too.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Akriti. Thank you.
Thank you so
Really, we had a informative and a nice explanation and presentation. I hope this topic will motivate the students and encourage them in active learning in forthcoming days, madam.
Thank you so much. If
And
I'm glad if I was able to like shed some light on the topic and help the students in general. I'd be very happy if I contributed some way in that.
thank you. On behalf of our management of hereby, I express my wholehearted thanks to you and your esteemed organization for giving such a informative and wonderful presentation. In future also, let's
Thank
have
you.
a good collaboration, madam, for the development of our students' career.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, sure.
So,
It'll be an it will be our pleasure.
thank you, madam. Another one more request, Dr. Akriti. One more request.
Mm.
Kindly let
Yeah,
us know any of your colleagues, friends who are able to support in the development of our pharmacy students from rural area.
sure, sure.
Sure.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you
Yeah,
for your
I'll do
wonderful
my
support.
best. Yeah.
Uh, Very sorry to disturb your. Uh,
Oh no, 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 that's not no issues. I'm very happy to be here actually. I really I was just hoping that everything goes well. There's no
Hello.
problem with the transmission and everything.
Thank you, Dr.
Hello?
Akriti. Occasion, Doctor, in this occasion, we are expecting your cooperation and support in future also. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I will try and help as much as possible and ask my colleagues too if they can contribute in any way.
Kindly let me know, madam. Madam, Dr.
Sure,
Akriti,
sure, sure,
whenever would like to plan to India, kindly let me know. We will invite our institution.
sure. That will be my honor. Thank you so much for that, sir.
Thank you, madam. Take care, madam. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.